All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Into the Lion's Den with your co-hosts, Captain
What's he got this week?
Silver and Gray.
It is silver and gray. It is very much that.
You are established, my friend, and you are looking charming. JD Stevens and Christian Griffith brought to you proudly by Level Creative Studios and Pride Roofing and Construction. Cue Billy's.
We're just gonna just a little kitty cat in there
All
somewhere.
right, put it in the comments section below. Let us know which cat noise works best, and we'll make sure to integrate it in as many episodes as humanly possible. Wah, 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 wah. All right, so enough of the shenanigans. So we're going to roll into a new topic today. This one's very applicable to where we are in business, and it's, well, I can't say that it's applicable to every style of business, but it is very much a thing that people have to, they have to put plans in motion to make sure that these times of the year, the downtime, right, roofing and exterior construction, we are bound by Mother Nature, right? So we can do a lot of things in the middle of the winter in terms of labor. We can do a lot of different repairs. We can do a lot of different fixes. We can do sheet metal. We can do things that don't require adhesives to bind, right? But outside of that, we have a lot less things going on, and people are a lot less likely to say yes quickly to our sales personnel. So there's a lot more. Let's just call it downtime, okay? So you got prime time, and then you got downtime. Today we're going to be talking about how to position yourself to utilize that effectively so that you don't lose traction with your business. JD?
Absolutely. So he said it. We see it a lot in our particular industry, exterior contracting of any kind. We have seasonality in the winter, just because of weather and those sort of things. I experienced a lot of seasonality with, I worked in farm and ranch for a long time, so we experienced different types of seasonality.
Like, did I just die? I'm going to heaven. Take me, God.
We're being called home.
It wasn't a trumpet, so it wasn't the rapture, so it must have been an aneurysm. I'm good with it. Let's go.
But a lot of businesses will experience maybe not extended periods of seasonality like we have, but everyone has different seasonality that they're going to go through. And I think that every business is subject to it because there's times of the year where people are less willing to buy. First of the year, you typically see it in retail once January, right after Christmas, you kind of get the, we always called it the Christmas hangover. So
everybody spent all their money. They don't want to buy any more stuff.
correct.
That makes sense.
So there's people bringing stuff back. There's people exchanging it out, but you just see a lot less foot traffic. And like retail specifically, which I did for a long time, and then farm and ranch, it's just everyone is kind of like, yeah, we spent all our money. Now we're waiting for tax returns, or we're waiting for warmer weather. People are starting to hunker down, things like that. So you experience it. Granted, it's for a shorter amount of time because pretty soon March is rolling around and you got everyone thinking about spring break and things like that. But everyone experiences some amount of seasonality no matter what industry you're in. Of like, I don't remember who I was talking with recently, but it's like I went out looking for a jacket one year and it's like middle of January and they already have they're putting up the stuff for boats and swimming suits and stuff. And I'm like, you guys do realize that it's not going to be over 50 for 3 more months minimum. Like, this is crazy.
Well, seasonality doesn't just affect business, right? I mean, athletes can attest to this. There are seasons for football. There are seasons for wrestling. There are seasons for basketball, whatever. But true dedicated athletes, and maybe a good transition for the first bullet point on the topic, is what do dedicated athletes do in the off season? Well, they generally put in even more reps, right? This quote was painted on the wall in my high school football locker room, and it's something that I understood the quote, but I didn't really firmly grasp it, mostly because I was, just a dumb high school kid or whatever.
Of course.
But it's something that I bring up a lot in our sales meetings or in meetings in general, especially around this time of the year. Abraham Lincoln, that's the quote, he said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. So around here, what this time of the year is to essentially to look back, reflect, analyze data, find out all of our weak points, our sharp edges, and work diligently to sharpen our axe, right?
Yeah.
Everything that we can do, anywhere where we're hemorrhaging, we patch those things up. Anywhere where we have misses, we reset protocols. Anywhere where we have people maybe not effectively trained, or maybe they're falling off of the rails and trying to bypass processes, we redirect and we bring them back and we reinstate those processes and we practice them over and over and over and over again, so that the moment that there's more opportunity available, they are no longer, spraying and praying. They are a sharpshooter. That's what our business does during this time.
Absolutely. And that's just about reframing the seasonality of like a lot of folks take the, when they run into seasonality, they use it as a time to like pull away of like, there's a lot of industries where it's like through the summer, it's like I worked my ass off. I worked for 6 months, long hours, and really, really hard. And then they're like, I just want to take the winter off. And typically I haven't seen that that's the best approach. And so it's like, it's about reframing of like, you can still be very efficient and put in not the crazy hours that we put in during the summer. But you're spending it doing other things of like exactly what you're talking about, of like reframing what we're doing right now of like, okay, as a personal thing, everyone should go through and look at their year rolling into the end of the year of like, here's where I did great. And here's where I did poorly. We're doing quarterly reviews and we do those things and we, you take time to sit everyone down and be like, how do you really feel that you did? But even if your company doesn't do those type of things of like taking time to like, this is what I'm looking to get out of my life in the next, whatever it is of like, I'm not a huge like long-term goal person because I've just never really been that person. But I know the things that I want out of my life. I have a weird things with goals of like, it was the way that they were handled around my family. But like, here's where I want to end up. So it is a goal, but I look at it differently. So like, is what I've been doing for the last little while effective? So like, I look at it, I'll take time to look at my personal life, but inside of work, it's having that honest conversation of like, where am I failing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, people should do this more often than once a year.
Sure.
Right? Like
Absolutely.
you see that in regular life where you see that people kind of just give up right around Halloween and do whatever the hell that they feel like doing. And then they reassess at the very end of the year and plug in a couple of goals, for new year, new me type of thing. Right. I think that's short-sighted. I think that's very much complacent. I think that everybody should spend a lot of time regularly self-assessing, honestly self-assessing what's going on, right? So sometimes it has to be propagated by the organization through things like a review or things like a performance improvement plan or things like, acknowledging an error and that type of stuff and actually working to, not recreate that error. But I think that it sounds like we sound like a broken record on these podcasts all the time when it kind of boils down to discipline, right? That should be embedded into your discipline, into your personal habits as honest self-reflection. And I say honest, and I said it very clearly and slowly on purpose because I'm emphasizing that word. A lot of people self-reflect and they have convoluted sense of self, right? They don't really like to admit when they're wrong, or they don't really like to admit when they're failing, or they don't really like to acknowledge that they have weaknesses. But the purpose of self-reflection is to create friction, because friction is the only place where you can truly and honestly start to gain any form of traction, right? It's just like, you're working out your body, right? You're not going to get anywhere showing up to the gym, moving around weights that are easy. Just the fact that you're there is kind of cool because at least you have timing discipline. But at the same time, you have to break down the muscle fibers. You have to create friction. The only way you can do that is honest self-assessment. Right?
And so I'm a woodworker. So the way that I view that is when you do that self-reflection, you should be taking a really high, or a really low grit sandpaper to yourself of like, so you're taking a 60 or an 80. so that you can really scrub away and be honest of like, here's the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to get this, this crown on the board flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're taking the time to sand that down. And then as you work through the different things, you work up in, it's always opposite and screws my brain up when I'm trying to talk about it, but you're working up the numbers in your grit. And it's getting more and more fine and more smooth the farther you go through this process of like, so when you initially start, it's supposed to be coarse. It's supposed to have lots of friction, like you're saying, of in order to refinish a part of something that you potentially have painted over of like, I know that I'm not doing very good there, but I'm going to just slap a coat of, everyone's been in an apartment where you can tell that the landlord's painted it 1,000,000 times and not taken any time to actually do anything because there's just like 14 layers of paint and you're like,
it's like looking at your dashboard and on your car and seeing 14 different lights show up, codes, right?
Yeah.
And then just putting a little bit of duct tape over top of them so you don't see them anymore. They still exist.
Absolutely. I'm just going to unplug it. I actually had a car I did that in one time. Of like, I got tired of looking at a light. I couldn't afford to fix it. It was a check engine light, and I had to go in to get it. I don't know. I think it was back when we still had like safety, not necessarily emission. It was over the emission, but I had to go in and have it checked for safety. And they'd fail you if you had a check engine light. So I like figured out how to take my dash off and unplug the light because it didn't have an OBD2, so they couldn't plug into it. So I was just like, if the light's unplugged, they can't say anything.
You slumlord, you.
Yeah, like don't do those things, by the way. It was a really bad idea, but I did it because that's what I thought the solution. It wasn't. It was fix it. I ended up having to fix it like a month later.
Well, a really good analogy to this conversation that we're having about slapping, masking tape over top of it or painting over top of a blemish instead of actually fixing the problem, the origin.
Terrible life hack videos.
Right. They're a very temporary solution to a long-term problem, right? And it's embedding into whatever this system, right? You might have a small, yes, that's a problem. If you can't afford the fix, you know what the fix is. That's a problem, but that can be solved through planning, through budgeting, through time and energy, right? But you have to know that it exists. A lot of the times, and this was actually one of the main reasons where I drifted out of wanting to go into medicine, because that's where my background was, and I went into healthcare. I call it preventative healthcare. The gym to some people is just a place to flex your muscles and pick up chicks, but to me it was a place to actually get to the root of many problems so that you can avoid other things. In the hospital systems, a lot of the times the training for doctors and things like that is to essentially just prescribe for the result, right? And mask the pain, mask the whatever the symptoms is. It's not necessarily to teach you how to go back to the origin of this problem and actually dive into it and fix that problem so you don't see it show in a symptoms later down the road, which I think might be just part of the overall scheme of the world to generate more business for Big Pharma. But we'll do conspiracy theories later down in another episode. But either way, that's what I did not like about it. It seemed like a lot of the times because I was doing shadowing and stuff like that, the doctors weren't really listening. They were just prescribing. They had their pen and pad ready. You tell me that you have a symptom of seasonal depression, SSRI, boom, right? Whatever, right? And then maybe not that fast, but at the same time, that's just kind of what it felt like. But that's what a lot of people fall into, though, is that they're masking the problem, right? If you take the winter off, yes, everybody needs to refresh. Everybody needs to recharge. But if you're not going to the origin of the problem and, putting the proper gears in place, or maybe pulling the gears out, polishing them off, getting rid of the grit so that they move faster and smoother, you're going to have the exact same problems the next year. And then you're just going to inculcate into your system, into your life, into whatever business, or, throw every analogy at it that you want to, but you are literally just going to perpetuate the cycle the next year. There's no growth there. Right?
And so one of the big questions that I think that I run into of like what you're talking about of like sometimes when people come to you for solutions, they are looking for exactly what you're talking about out of the medical industry of like, just give me something to make it right now. And that's in my opinion, that's not the best. I've done lots of that in, my different careers of like, I just need to fix it right now. And then eventually it comes back to bite you in the ass. And it's a way bigger deal than what it was initially.
See episode 27, snowball effects. No, I'm just kidding.
But,
yeah.
I think that was an episode, though. Snowball effects.
I don't know
like,
if it's number
That wasn't the right
27.
number, but
I don't know. I made that up. But either way, the snowball effect is real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess the question I would have is like, so you're saying all of this, but what do I do? Like, how do I sharpen my axe? Of like, what are the different ways I can approach this? Of like, I really truly hear what you're saying, and I want to do these things. I want to get better. What are some of the ways of like, Dan was in here. Let's talk about like, what are some of the ways that like a salesperson could sharpen up of like things
So-
they could do?
Sure. In downtime, so a lot of our salespeople. So this is our business specific, but it can hopefully you have enough critical thinking to apply what I'm saying to whoever it is that's watching, right? But as a salesperson, things that you can do when the sales come slower. You can try different forms of lead generation, right? You can try your hand in different methods, right? So if you're a door-to-door salesperson, but you can't go door-to-door because there is 3 foot of snow on the ground and it's actively snowing and nobody's going to open the door, you still have to drive that business. What should you do? Well, maybe let's try our hand in some form of cold calling. Let's try our hand in business to business. Let's try our hand in business development on a higher scale for networking opportunities that will lead to more fruit coming to you rather than you going to pick it later down the road, right? So those are things that you can do in just practice so that you have more abundance available to you. But the other things that you can do is work with your manager on where your conversion ratios lie, right? So it's like, okay, I do a great job of finding clients. I do a great job of getting them to the point where they have filed an insurance claim and they're ready to do some business, but then my conversion with those clients falls to 10%, right? Well, what does that mean? What that generally means, salespeople can probably pick this out, but that means you're friend zoning yourself, right? That means you are in a position where you've built such a friendship-based relationship that you forgot about the point of being there and meeting this person in the first place, right? You're not asking for the sale. So we can spend time doing, we call it role play roulette, right? Where we put ourselves in a really uncomfortable, inorganic scenario, but it's supposed to mock an organic scenario, right? And we hit you with every question that we can, and we force those things out of you. You can spend time with your colleagues. You can go and shadow, right? As an entry-level salesperson should spend this time shadowing a very high-producing salesperson. They should pin themselves to them as if they're their wingman and listen and absorb and take notes, right? You can start diving into literature, right? You can start reading books, or you can maybe invest into yourself and buy some form of training platform online to become an effective salesperson. There's all kinds of things that you could do. The world is yours. You got a supercomputer in your pocket. Maybe just ask that question to Google. What should I do to get better when I don't have the same abundance in front of me? How can I get my repetition in? Right? So, what? Huh? Yes, ask ChatGPT is what he said. It'll tell you the answers to the universe, and then maybe turn on you and nuke the whole world and make the machines rise. I don't know, but conspiracy theories again. I really think we should talk about this.
I mean, we definitely should do an episode, like a side episode or something. But I also, I can speak from a management point of view of like, I have never had a team member like. Let me rephrase that. I've never turned a team member away when they've come to me and been like, I'm failing here, or I need help here, or what can I do to be better at this? If I'm the person that can direct that conversation. And so a lot of times the help that you need is if you have great management above you, that help can be 2 desks over or 1 phone call away, whatever it is, however you work of this is where I'm failing. Can you help me? As a member of management, I've never blatantly just been like, nope, not going to help you. There has been, there will be times when you're there going to be like, I would love to help you with that. I can't do it right now. Remind me. I would love to help you with that.
Right.
And so let's do that in a meeting. Maybe a lot of the questions you're asking we've heard from other team members. So we're going to turn it into a training topic that we're going to do in a meeting, or we're going to do, if you want one-on-one of like, express that too, of like, I need help with this.
Mm-hmm.
There's also tons of people that in most workplaces so like I run systems. So a lot of times I know about training resources and things like that are built into systems that maybe the managers know about, but in the moment aren't thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's sometimes even auxiliary like support team members,
Mm-hmm.
where you could go to them and be like, hey, our CRM, we work in it every single day. And I feel like it can probably do this, but I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those support members will be like, oh, yeah, totally does that. Here's how.
Mm-hmm.
And other times they'll be like, oh, yeah, here. And they'll give you the resource. They'll tell you, like, log in, go to this place and select help.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, most platforms that you utilize, softwares that you utilize, have some sort of training somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you want to be, I want to be faster at this and use this better, so it doesn't feel like I'm trying to, I think the most common thing I've heard complained about from like when people talk to me is like, it's hard because I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the software.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. There's lots of ways to understand the software better.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? I had never used this software when I started here either.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I did it. And I can't tell you the number of times I've told people that, and then they'll come back and ask like the same question a week later. And it's like, well, did you check out the training
Mm-hmm.
that's built in?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, well, no, I just wanted an answer to the question. It's like, I gave you the answer to the question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's you should have a maybe more of an arms wide open type of I guess stance, right? It's you want to become, you need to open yourself up to the opportunity for the training, the opportunity for the growth, right?
Absolutely.
This is a great time to do it because you have a very big safety net around you, because there's less repercussions to the action, right? So if you're putting things that you're learning in this training and into action, there's less opportunity for the human error to show its face and to cause bigger repercussions, right? More people have more time. So if you're asking questions too, so to spin off of that, if you're asking questions to people during this time, people have more time on their hands. They can spend time with you to help you become the expert if they are the resident expert in that category, right? So, and then I guess just overall, as an organization, things that we do during this time of the year, first and foremost, we have to dive into the data. We have to look at the data, and we have to really find out, because, hearing a problem from one person may be an isolated incident. Maybe it's just with that person, and that's a good training, opportunity with that one person. But like you said, there could be patterns to this, right? So if we find that we're having a really hard time with the transition timing between this status and this status, right? Or we're having a really hard time with collecting these accounts when it has this particular scenario involved with it, or so on and so forth. We can dive into those utilizing data. So one of the things that everybody should always focus on is making sure they have the most clean data that they possibly can and the most expansive data bank possible. Everything that you have, if it's tangible, it should be written down and quantified and therefore utilized during this time period. But excuse me, but the first thing you have to dive into the data. So one of the things that some of our guys, including you, are doing right now is investigating expenses, right? So if we look into our expenses as an organization, we can pick out all the things that we consider necessary for business right now, and then we can investigate, are we maximizing their capacity, right, or not? If we're not, we can embed new protocols or new things into our processes to make sure that we are actually maximizing this dollar spent. Now, the other thing that we could do is if we find out that this system that we're paying for and this system that we're also paying for do the same thing, well, maybe we can actually shave off some of these things and increase our overall net. That's a good way for an organization to figure out how to do what businesses want to do, which is profit, and profit at a higher number, right? It doesn't always have to be the customer's responsibility to help you profit well. It needs to be your organization and your efficiency, and that's where you find it, through data investigation, analyzing things, and then utilizing simple systems like Six Sigma Lean, right? If you look at an operational, some form of process that's embedded into into your function, your mechanism of your business, and you can write it down and map every step that it takes to perform this particular task. And then you find out within those tasks that you're duplicating efforts here. There are too many hands in the pot right here that slows things down. You're investing too many resources here because you don't need to, and you can find that stuff out during this time, and you can lean out your organization. I'm not saying that you need to do that for the sake of firing people, which is what big corporations utilize Six Sigma Lean for. But I'm saying you can embed the same thought process in. Is let's spend time to analyze how we're doing the job now, so it's not just sufficient, it's also efficient the way that we're running this, right? Other things that we're doing as an organization, we bring in product knowledge experts and we have them do refresher courses and give new information, right? Products are always evolving, right? The LP Smart Sidings product today is different than it was last year, and it's different than it was 10 years ago. We should refresh on all of those things, become more of a product expert, and this is the time to be able to gain that knowledge so you're speaking from more of a confident and experienced perspective. We do all of those things every year. We utilize different types of training resources for salespeople during this time of the year. A lot of the times, salespeople, they sort of get smell blind to their managers, right? Their managers they'll emphasize certain things because it's important for the business, but it may not hit with them the true understanding. But if they hear it from a different perspective, from a different trainer, that's very valuable because then they've absorbed it, right? There's a lot of research around that where it's like everybody learns differently. Maybe this trainer used more visuals. Maybe this person used more text, additions and stuff like that. Maybe it just came from a different tone and a different perspective, and now I understand it. But you can implant these things into your business or into what you're doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you're a business and you're doing it for the whole organization. If you're a one-man show or if you're just working for an organization and you want to learn how to be the most efficient that you can, the downtime is the time to spend the most amount of time sharpening your axe. That's how you do it, right?
Absolutely. That's the time that you need to like focus in of like, and the other thing that utilizing downtime for is like, maybe there's you're in an industry that you use a specific set of tools or a tool, and you have a tool that you have budgeted for and now can replace. Mm-hmm. But you're like, I'm really afraid to move away from like maybe a tool that is inefficient, mm-hmm. like equipment or software, or this can be anything. And just the tool of like, this is the time to be like, okay, let's pull this out and then use the time period where we're a little bit slower to quickly, we'll be able to identify the issues mm-hmm. right now to where when I'm in the middle of my busy season, mm-hmm. it's not, holy crap, I have no idea how to use this, or I don't know where this setting is because it's not in the same place.
Absolutely. In any business or any athlete or any whatever position that you're in, the heaviest and most, energy required times of your year should never be a time for a sweeping change.
No.
Ever. That is the dumbest thing that you can do to yourself. You're going to take yourself backwards 6 months in time if you try to embed something new in the heat of everything else. You should be confident with the process that you're using. Is it the most efficient? Probably not. Everything can evolve, right? But if you vary from it, you change it in the midst of when it needs to, when it's the most important for things to be hitting on all cylinders, you are going to ruin your life for that year.
Have we done
it? We have done it. I am speaking from experience, right? So during this time, you should create strategy sessions. You should look at like, where do we want to go in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? What are the milestones to achieve there? What things need to change in order for us to get there? And then when we know what those changes are, when's the best time to implement that change, right? We need to A/B test it during this time, right? If this happens, then this happens. If this happens, then this happens, so on and so forth. This was not the right one. Let's try option number 2. And we can do that for a couple weeks. You have the ability to do that, right? So
yeah, and that's a really important time of like, I like this time of like, there's going to be people that work in finance. So like, yeah, but it's the close out of the year. I don't have time to mess with this stuff. Of like, yeah, but you have that time in a different time of year.
Right.
So like, there's different times when everybody is less, seasonality is not just based on the weather. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so if you have a system that you're utilizing, I mean, we had it happen earlier this year, and we had to make a change simply based on contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a change out of we had one software that we love and we still love the functionality of,
Mm-hmm.
but the main thing that we used it for was degraded by a change that they made based on their business.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, wow, this is not effective for what we need it to be effective for anymore. We need to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And so we switched something out. And unfortunately, because of the way that the way that we switched it out, all of a sudden the utilization was gone because it wasn't helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So now getting the adoption rate of the new software has also been very hard
Mm-hmm.
because everyone was already like, yeah, well, I wasn't having to do that, so why would I start with a new one?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always going to be, pushback. But like,
There's always going to be people who want to run their own business inside the business.
what? Never. Not once, not never. But, it's one of those, like, make sure that when you're making these changes, you're doing it at a time that it can be effectively trained and taught
Mm-hmm.
of, sharpening your seasonality, sharpening the axe during your seasonality.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, those changes you need to make or like those things that you need to look. I know that we've talked about it in the past and ultimately not moved this way, but sometimes it's diversifying of like, we're going to add this thing to like, maybe you're in a very niche business and you need to add something to get you through those months of like, what's something that's similar to what we already do, the processes and stuff that we already have in place that we could add to help us through the winter.
Synergistic, yeah.
Synergistic, there you go. When you hit those seasonality times, you should be, that would be the time to like test those things of like landscaping switches to snow removal.
Mm-hmm.
Is those kind of things of like, I can't cut grass anymore, but there's snow on the ground. So hopefully it snows a lot this year so I can utilize my guys so I don't have to, take I know a lot of landscape guys that had to have winter jobs because it's just the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe it's time to diversify your offering, make yourself a little bit less niche, a little bit not quite so pigeonholed where you're at. Could be another thing that you identify during seasonal times of like, here's a way that we can sharpen the axe of like, this would make us effective and maybe make the crunch a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you're completely changing your business. It's just, this is another trade that we could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've taken the time to identify those.
Mm-hmm. I think there's another good analogy. I keep bringing the sports and athletes into the conversation, but I think it's probably a useful visual.
Yeah.
So in the down season for, let's call it a football player, the majority of the reps that they're putting in is not necessarily on the field, right? That happens during preseason. I mean, sometimes it's, doing quick drills on the field. Sometimes it's, just catching the ball, whatever. Like those should always be embedded. But the majority of what they're doing is working on their strength and explosion, right? Keep their body at optimal performance. So you're feeding the exoskeleton rather than the computer within the exoskeleton, right? And that allows you to have a much firmer base, right? It allows you to be able to take more impact with less, with less repercussion to it, right? An athlete that fails to, spend time in a gym, right? Putting in time, building their muscles, building their mobility, building their joints to be more able to take hits or to do the movement.
They're foundational things.
Right? An athlete who fails to do that cannot perform on the field with the rest of the team because they did that. They spent their time doing it. So that's another point to, I think, make in this conversation is if you're taking those breaks, refreshment is good, right? It's always good to reset, refocus, that kind of stuff. But it does not need to be an entire season, right? It should be a short amount of time, and you should be itching to get back out there and build your base back up, right? And what I was trying to get at there, I lost my train of thought, but if you're not doing it, you are going to fall behind because the good competitors, not all competitors, but the good competitors are absolutely sharpening the axe. They're getting stronger. They're getting faster. They're getting more explosive. If you're not doing it, you're no MVP. You might not even make the team.
Yeah, and I think that another part of this that we do as far as, doing the reps and getting more of like, how can we be better of like, this is also a time for networking. When you're going through your seasonal time periods where you're slow, that's a really good time to like get into the networking events around your industry of like wedding photographers working with florists and, that kind of thing of like building those connections that can potentially be a secondary referral source. That's not, the best relationships give and take. So like you're going to push them as much as they're going to push to you. So, you're not going in there just trying to get exclusively, like send me stuff. I'm not really providing you anything, but you're going to send me stuff. But you're building an actual network of people that you get along with. And the other thing that does for you when you build those networks of like, I think in like the side of the sales world, you're still getting in the practice. You're still getting the reps of like, we're practicing catching the ball right now, or like, getting on the roof. In a way, shape, and form. So you're not getting rusty while you're in this seasonal slow time.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'll just give this. I don't think this is something where I'm giving away our secrets too much to people because this is kind of a common understanding. But what's funny is when you network as a roofing and exterior construction person, like creating network connections, creating resources. Is the smartest way to do business for long term because they're going to perpetually feed you the longer that you serve them well, right? But what's funny is you'll get laughed out of, let's call it an insurance agent's office. You'll literally get laughed out of the office if you show up a week after the storms hit.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you just happen to be the 54th person in the last 3 days that wanted to come in and do the same thing, right?
Yeah, I'm a roofer and I want, or, whatever it is of like, you're a wedding photographer walking in the middle of summer when all the weddings are happening and being like, hey, let's build a relationship. Bro, I'm booked till next month.
Yeah, so
I'm good.
You're getting laughed out of the office, but if you spend the downtime making those network connections and watering and nurturing this relationship, they are going to be harvestable at the point where everybody else is late to the game, but you are already there. Right, you should capitalize during this time on all of those little things that might fall off the radar when things get faster.
Absolutely, and every industry has those. Of like, the other thing to do is, part of this networking is get involved with your local community. Of like, every community has some sort of networking group that you don't necessarily have to pay to be a member of. There's chambers. There's this, there's that. Of like, people may not even in your local community who might want to work with you, just clients that are chamber members. There's always people to meet who are going to be like, oh, I was totally looking for that this summer and didn't even realize you were in town. Even though you might feel like everyone knows who you are, there's a larger subset of people who probably have no idea who you are. Of like, or we've seen your building and we thought you were part of this other company and we don't like this other company because your logos are the same or your whatever it is. Of like, we thought you were a part of this. Of like, that's not at all. No, that's not true at all. So putting yourself into your community during the times when you're slow and have more time to dedicate is a huge thing to do. Of, there's lots of different ways that you can network through that way. And so remember to utilize networking during your slow times. Because when you're in the heat of like, I am buried, I'm up to my ears in orders or whatever it is, you're not thinking about those things. So if you have time to take time to train and network and those kind of things, you should take the time when you have it.
Spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe.
Absolutely, because it's going to, we have whole guys who've built their entire book off of referral basis of like, I don't have to knock anymore because I've built relationships and taken care of these people and they generate enough business my way because I also push referrals to them that I don't have to, however it is that you generate orders in your particular industry, I don't have to do these things anymore because I just have them being brought to me.
Right. Got any other cool bullet points we should go over?
Only if you have any like. The big one is like any cool off-season success stories of like I think that the biggest cool off-season success story is the one that we've talked about a million times of like we technically started in the off-season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so
We built a foundation.
Yeah. So, well, I'm trying to, I guess, premise this by talking about why putting in the reps year round is important.
Yeah.
When I first started in this industry, it was going to be a very temporary thing because I was under the impression from the people that I was working with that it was seasonal, right? I was under the impression that if you wanted to sell year round, you had to go where storms were year round, AKA become a storm chaser. And I was like, no, I'm never doing that. So I'll do this for a little bit so I can gain some money, right? And then I'll take that money and I'll go try something else, right? It was very much going to be a temporary thing to relieve financial burden, right? But what I found was as it got colder outside, less and less of my competitors were in eyeshot, right? I did not see any other door knockers. I did not see any other roofing trucks driving around. I didn't see anything but homeowners and me by myself. So I took that time to prove a point to myself and to my bosses that I could do this job year round and have zero problem with staying in the exact same place. And so, yeah, long story short, I built the original book of business that Pride started off of in the dead of winter, doing things that other people didn't want to do because they felt like, it had been stormed out and so on and so forth, right? But the abundance mindset has always been with me, right? So if those additional reps are just a little bit more uncomfortable during the off season, people give you the benefit during that. People were actually like, dude, you're killing it. I showed up. I had a client. I had a guy that told me, he's like, well, I think I went to his house the first time, like right before Thanksgiving. And he's like, dude, we're going to be really busy basically from Thanksgiving until Christmas. And I was like, okay, so I'll come back after Christmas. I showed up on December 26th at 10 a.m., knocked on the door, and I said, I'm here because you said to be here. And he signed up that day, right? And he said verbatim, he told me, I had no intention of doing this work anytime. I neglect things. I normally procrastinate, so on and so forth. But the fact that you're here and there's snow on the ground and you did what you said you're going to do, I know you're going to take care of my project. And he signed the contract right there on the spot, December 26th. To my bosses and the people that are in our industry, that was like an unheard of thing. They're like, we don't sign contracts in territories where the storms hit in June. I did, right? So it's a little off. It's a little bit off the cuff or off the beaten track of what we were talking about with using the time to train, but I think you should also use the opportunity that's available to you, right? Press on the buttons, spin the dials, do the things that other people are not doing during that downtime, and you will be incredibly successful.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually a really interesting point and a really great point of, abundant mindset of if you approach seasonality with that mindset of there's going to be a subsection of people inside of every industry that are like, we're in the slow season, we're in this, we're in that are going to let off the gas when you're in your seasonal slow time of whatever your industry is. Be different. Of like, no, I'm not ready to be done. I want to do this all the time because this is, I believe I can, or I love this, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to prove that I can do it whenever, however, and as often as I'd like. So that I don't ever have to do anything else because I love this thing that I'm doing. And going into abundance mindset, there's always opportunity if you're willing to find it.
Yep. There's blood in the water everywhere that you go, right? Salespeople know when the openings are. Sometimes you just have to create those openings by just being disciplined, right? So, got any other topics you want to boil over?
I don't.
I think we got this one, right? So the overall summation of what we're talking about is use your time wisely, right? Never leave your craft. just spend time honing in on it. Build your base, get stronger, find where your weaknesses are, turn them into strengths during the time that you have available to you so that you can perform under the lights.
Absolutely. Seek out the training from all the sources that you have available to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I bet there is, more training out there than you realize if you really look for it.
Those are some of my favorite motivational speeches. They put on Instagram, they put stuff together, but generally the words that really resonate with me are athletes are, turned into role models under the lights, but they created themselves in the darkness. I think that's a really powerful thing, right? They did the shit nobody wanted to do in the weight room, after practice, before practice. They went to the secondary practices in the mornings, the optional stuff. They showed up. They put in the reps. They did that. They deserve to be under the lights and be that role model. That's what you have to do in business as well. You have to have that unquenchable, unsatiable type of urge inside of you of constantly wanting to grow and spend dedicated time self-reflecting so that in a targeted and strategic manner how to build yourself better. Use the time wisely.
Absolutely. I say that every time. I actually got notes on that. I say absolutely a lot. So that's the thing, that talking about being better.
Yep.
That's the thing that I need to work on is of
Absolutely.
It's a word that I say all the time without realizing I'm saying it. It totally hit me that I do that.
There you go.
Just haven't it pointed out. So maybe ask people around you.
Yeah. Ask for some guidance. Get some feedback. Chew on the ear of an unbiased third party. Let them investigate into your life and see what happens. If they're a mentor and they have some guidance, this is a good time to start asking those questions, right? But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate all of the investment, the views. We appreciate all the time that everybody has spent listening to us. And we'd love to get some comments. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you. So drop it in the comments section below. Please like and subscribe.
Smash that like button.
I really wanted to make a joke about kids' YouTube. I'm like, if not, your mom is going to fall in the crack and break her back, So, but that's not actually going to happen. I will not manipulate you folks. Please just like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. We'd love to keep doing it for you. Catch you on the flip side.
We'd love to catch you next week.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you've gathered enough ammunition to go out, fight the good fight, and become a better person every single day. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content, ask us some questions. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you.